Sometime last year, I had the pleasure of seeing The Edge of 17, which surprisingly ended up being one of my most enjoyed films of 2016. Not only was it because it was a thoughtful and cleverly humorous character study that was elevated by a great performance by Haley Steinfeld, but also because it was such a realistic window into teenage society. Even more recently, I sat down and watched Superbad with two friends of mine, and while we got several huge laughs out of it, by the end we all agreed that the movie really left us with things to think about and reflect on, giving the movie a large amount of unexpected emotional value. I think teen films are much more difficult to make than people realize, because they often require adult writers not only to make an entertaining and engaging story, but to also have an authentic teenage vibe, giving the adolescent characters of the film dialogue that would come naturally to the average teenager. This is so difficult because the writers of these films have to resurrect the feeling of teenage youth in order to create relatable characters, and if done improperly, audience members of both young and old will immediately recognize the phony dialogue. A question that will rise in your mind when I say this is, well, how can writers create dialogue for teenagers if society is constantly changing? And the answer is that a good writer won't focus on trivial things that will inevitably change. Technology, trends, fashion, etc. None of this matters. Sure, these are things that will be included in teen films in order to make them more realistic, but if these items become the center focus of the movie, the film will not only date itself, but will no longer be a teen film. No, a good teen film focuses on the human qualities of teenagers, and while minor alterations are made to teenage personalities over time, the emotional roots of adolescence never really changes. That's why movies like American Graffiti, despite being set in the 1960s, still hold up today because they present ideas that are still very present in the lives of teens today. So what am I getting at here? Well, essentially, I'm stating that teen films matter. But more importantly, it matters that they're done correctly, because if done right, a teen film can cater to a young audience while also pulling older audience members back to a time of youth, giving them a rare emotional feeling that not many other genres of film can replicate. The movies that I've chosen to discuss today are not only special to me, but the messages that each one conveys are very different, but no less significant. So back to Superbad. This film is very humorous, and being a teen film written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, it's only natural that its humor is often very immature. However, given the teen environment that the movie establishes itself in, that's not exactly a bad thing. To say the film's main characters are losers would be an understatement. Their conversations are often provocative and vulgar, they don't know how to talk the girls, and they bicker at each other like children. However, this is in no way unrealistic behavior, as we all know people like this. Heck, maybe some of you watching are like this. The story of Superbad is simple. 3 teenage boys want to attract girls at their school, and in order to do so, they must find a way to get alcohol for a party. The simplistic setup not only leaves time for the majority of the movie's jokes, but also time to develop its characters. The 2 main characters, played wonderfully by Jonah Hill and Michael Cera, I might add, are very close friends in their senior year of high school and are faced with the conflict of their college careers growing closer and closer, the main conflict being that they're both accepted into different schools. Jonah Hill's character Seth is jealous that his best friend Evan will be attending a different university with another friend instead of him, and this conflict only builds throughout the movie, leading to what I think was the line that impacted me the most in the entire film.
I want you to know I don't want to live with Fogel. I don't want to live with him. And so, I'm afraid to live with strangers.
This is a line that resonates with so many people, myself included, especially when they are so close to a huge change like college. I myself also share a similar fear of who I'm going to room with during my college years. What will they think of me? What will I think of them? How will we get along, etc.? Life after graduation is a large hurdle in so many people's lives because it forces them to leave people whom they have spent so many years growing to know, finding their footing, discovering who they are, and finding their purpose in life, which is quite a daunting thought. That's not even mentioning the secondary message of the movie, in which a character named Fogel spends his evening with 2 police officers, where he learns that while yes, it is important to know when to take things seriously, it's just as important to have fun and enjoy life. Perhaps it helps that Rogen and Goldberg, being lifelong friends, worked on the script at a very young age, completing the first draft at only the age of 13. They had a strong grasp on what makes teenhood so significant, and while Superbad is an extremely hilarious film, the themes that it tackles are so relatable and powerful that it makes it so much more than just another comedy movie. Now let's talk about Almost Famous, which has slowly shaped itself to be one of my favorite movies of the modern era. The film's story is essentially a dramatic retelling of director Cameron Crowe's experience writing articles on famous bands for Rolling Stone, and the experience of traveling alongside the bands during their tours. The story is retold through the eyes of a teen boy named Will, and his opportunity to interview the members of the fictional band, Stillwater. Of all the teen films I've seen, Almost Famous left me with the strongest, most overwhelming feeling of joy, yet a small bitter feeling as well. By the end of the film, you too feel like you've gone on a long trip with strangers who have slowly transformed themselves into acquaintances or even friends. The film explores ideas of traveling far away from home in an environment you're unfamiliar with, alongside people you don't know. It's a bit of a scary thought, and the movie expresses this beautifully, showing how the absence of things you're used to and the people you love can cause strong homesickness, but also can teach you things about yourself that you never knew before. For our main character Will, it's love, compassion, and friendship, but most importantly, Will learns that things aren't always as glamorous as they appear to be once you learn more about them. Music icons become more human in Will's eyes, and while they do become less mystical because of this, their humanity also reveals itself. So I guess if there's one large thing to take away from this movie for me, it's about the idea of maturing, making things more clear, taking risks, and building bonds. And by the end of the film, you're left with very pleasant yet melancholy emotions. The final film today is definitely the most laid-back of the three, made by a director who has crowned himself to be the master of laid-back films in many people's eyes, Richard Linklater, and his 1993 teen comedy, Dazed and Confused. While Superbad's B-plot dealt with a young boy learning how to have more fun and just enjoy his life of youth while it lasted, Dazed and Confused's entire runtime deals with that message on life. The movie spans over an entire day, the final day of high school to be exact, and as the gate of summer vacation opens up, several groups of friends plan to start their time off of school right, and just have a great time. If there's a single film that perfectly encapsulates teenhood in its simplest form, it's Dazed and Confused. The film shows so many varying cliques of teenagers all trying to fit in, that it's nearly impossible for an audience member to not relate to at least one of the characters in the films. The film doesn't have much of a plot, and the events of the story just kind of flow naturally. The real story comes from its characters, who are brought to life tremendously by the great acting and writing, and I think Linklater not only created believable teen dialogue with this film, but he also crafted a realistic keyhole into teen society as a whole. The film has a lot of characters that are all trying to find their place in high school life and society as a whole, but the film allows you to spend so much time with these characters in their moments of joy, fear, and vulnerability. The characters are often brought together through the same events, but they all react differently to each incident, helping distinguish who they really are. Dazed and Confused is a special film because it shows what it really means to be a teenager, hanging out with your friends, joking around, talking about life, and just having a good time. By the end of the film, you truly feel to have grown to know these characters, and thus know more about enjoying what the simpler aspects of life have to offer. I think the reason that so many of these films end with a sort of melancholic, bittersweet feeling is not simply because we've grown to love these films' characters so much, but because the movies themselves cause us to realize how short our time of youth really is, and why it's so important to cherish the short time we have. Which is why I think that teen films truly matter.